Fanboy Expo, totally awesome weekend. The one, the only Buck Rogers himself, Mr. Gail
Hey, I'm not there yet. How y'all doing?
Doing well.
Well,
Do I need this? Can you hear me all right?
yeah.
Okay. I've been sitting all day. Do you mind if I just stand up here?
Whatever you want.
Got a wireless line if you want.
Well, look at you.
Look at that.
I'm prepared. All the latest technology.
Uh,
Testing, testing. Oh, that sounds good, doesn't it?
yeah.
You think I knew what I was doing? What I usually do is, it's called a Q&A for a reason. I love to field questions from you guys. Have you got any questions? Like, how am I still alive?
How you start your career?
How?
Start your career.
How did I start it, or just started? It started a long time ago. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, get into the business and stuff.
I was an industrial chemist
Oh,
before I was an actor,
yeah.
and I was bored.
Yeah.
I was on two advisory task forces to the governor of Arkansas. I lived in Arkansas. And I was writing reports for the Graduate Institute of Technology at the University of Arkansas. And I was writing a report on the petroleum industry for the Industrial Development Commission of Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know. I did some of the original work on the Titan II missile fields and oxidizers. And I just was like, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 70.
Yeah.
Now I'm 74.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I made the change, because what happened was I decided that acting was the one thing that I enjoyed all aspects of. I had a singing group in college. I directed some plays and acted in plays and stuff. I realized that I enjoyed the rehearsal as well as the performance. So I resigned from all the things I was on, gave back my company car, sold the car that I had, and moved to New York and started driving a cab and going to acting school. And I picked a guy up on 61st and Central Park West and drove him across town. And on the way, he said, you know, I can tell you're not a cab driver. That's not what you do. And I said, well, I'm an actor. I go to acting school. And he said, well, have you ever thought about doing extra work? You know, I wasn't eating every day, which is not a bad thing, I guess, for an actor. And I said, well, what does it pay? He said, you know, extra work. And I said, you know, he said it's $29, $29.95 a day or something like that, plus lunch. And I thought, well, okay, I'm not eating every day. That'd be good. I get a lunch at least. So he said, give me a call next week. I'd like to help you out. I said, okay. So the next week I called him. The next day I was on the set of Love Story as an extra. And I did that, and then ended up getting a bit part, and which ended up on the cutting room floor. Then after that, then he called me up and said they're casting this movie. Come down and read for it. I read for it. I got the part. It was in an agent's office. Got the agent. The agent turned out to be a total bust, which was okay because I got a kind of a track record. And that's when my career started. And I've made a living solely from this industry since 1970. I started in 1969. And as I said, I was a cab driver for 6 months. They killed 7 cabbies that year in that 6-month period that I was driving. I was driving at night, so it was more dangerous, so they gave me an extra dime, which was cool. My life was worth 10 cents. Anyway, that's when it just kept on evolving from that. I ended up doing over 400 commercials. At one time, I had 27 national spots running at the same time. 7 loving care commercials running at the same time. And the line I had was, "You're not getting older. You're getting better."
Yeah.
That was me. And I was only supposed to do one, and the director went nuts over my reading, and so he said, put him in another piece of wardrobe and do this one. And so I just kept changing wardrobe and doing one after another. I ended up with 7 commercials out of the thing. I did a drift stand. I think I got a fever. I was a construction worker. Campbell Soup. I did all kinds of them. I did Ford Motor Company for 2 years. I was their spokesman. Then I got a soap, The Doctors, on NBC. Played a returned prisoner of war named Dr. Alan Stewart. And did that for 3.5 years, and then produced a movie called, what the hell was it called? I forget. Anyway, did that, and then produced a Broadway play called Amen Corner. Worked with Jimmy Baldwin, who's one of the premier black playwrights in the world. One of the Lost Generation actually was in Paris with Fitzgerald and those people. And then got flown out to Hollywood to do a screen test for a series that didn't sell, but then they liked me, and so they put me in a Beretta as a guest starring role. I played a killer. And then while I was out there, they said, you know, they're doing Airport 77, so I went in and read for that, and got that part, and then I did Airport 77. I kept flying back to New York because that's where I was living. And finally got tired. I was getting terminal jet lag going back and forth, so I finally moved to LA. It took me 2 years to get rid of my New York driver's license. And then just started working. I worked with Michael Landon. I did a Little House on the Prairie, an episode called The Handyman. I was the handyman. I built the Ingalls Kitchen. And it was a great guest starring role because Mike, his character, had taken a job someplace and he needed someone to finish this thing that he had started. So basically it was me and the family, and then Mike came back in the middle of the show and then left again and came back at the end of the show. And that was really nice. It was a beautiful part, well written. Got to be friends with Mike. Then I did Hawaii Five-0. It was an episode called The Ninth Step. I played a recovering alcoholic. And I was doing my ninth step, supposedly. And got offered a series by Jack Lord. And didn't do that one. Came back. Mike wanted me to do a pilot for him. It was called Stone, and it ended up a movie that we call Killing Stone. And after I shot that, Universal called my agent and said that they wanted me to do Buck Rogers. So my agent called me and said, you know, they wanted you to do Buck Rogers. I said, no, I'm not interested. I didn't want to do a comic book character. Like, I'd seen what Batman had done for Adam West's career. I don't know if you know this, but he didn't have any kind of work for over 20 years after he did Batman. His agent was telling me that he couldn't even get him for quiz shows. They were not interested. The only way he made a living for his family was doing dinner theater all over the country. And I thought, I don't want that. Things are going pretty well here. I don't want to kill myself with a comic book bop, bip, bam kind of thing. So they offered it 2 more times, and I kept saying, no, I don't want to do it. Wasn't interested in reading the script. So they finally said to him, look, would you read the script? His name was Meyer Michigan, that was my agent. He said, Meyer, would you read the script? If you like it, if you think it's something Gil would like, would you ask him to at least read the script? So he read the script, he called me up and he said, it's not what you think it is. It's not a cartoon character. The guy's got real humanity. I think you'll like it. Give it a read. So I gave it a read, and he was right. I like the sense of humor that existed with Buck Rogers that we did in the movie. Universal said they were willing to take second position to the Michael Landon project, which meant that if Michael's project was picked up, then they would have to find somebody else to do Buck Rogers after I did the movie. So I said, okay, fine. I mean, it's a win-win for me. So I did Buck Rogers. Mike's show wasn't picked up, and the movie did so well that NBC picked it up. There was an option to do a series. NBC picked up the option, and we ended up doing the series Buck Rogers. I did that after the movie, did that for 2 years. Then went on to do other stuff. So that's basically it. I hope I didn't overdo that.
No, that's good.
And then I did actually 5 series altogether. The last one I did was called Code 3. I was the host of the show, the rescue show. Sidekicks was my favorite of all the series I've done. I did that with Ernie Reyes Jr. I really liked the relationship between, I played a cop. He was a kid. He was a kid. He had to play a kid. But he was I don't know if you know Ernie Reyes or know his record. He's the youngest forms or non-contact karate champion in the world. He was about 8 when he won it. He was like a triple black belt or something. Anyway, Ernie was a great kid. But the relationship between this guy, this cop that I played, and this kid, I really liked it. I liked the way it was written. We were 2 separate cultures sort of working over each other, and it was like the edges were getting knocked off of both of us by each other and learning each other's things and beginning to appreciate the other culture. He began to appreciate mine. I just really enjoyed it, and creatively it was much more satisfying than anything I had done before. Unfortunately, it was what I call a political killing because the president of the network liked it. We went on the air. He got fired, the new president came in, and of course he hated it. That's the corporate milieu. And it works in automobiles and everything else. Whatever was designed before the guy came in, that's a terrible design. He wants all the stuff to be his. So, even though we were the highest rated show that ABC had on Friday night, we were the only Friday night show they didn't renew. We were beating out everybody else, even the ABC shows. We had a higher rating in. They picked up all the other shows and dropped us because it was done by another guy. So, anything else? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd first like to thank you for being here, Mr. Gerard. That was getting my book signed and picture signed and picture made with you.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely incredible.
You have to thank God for that because I got nothing to do with it. I just wake up in the morning and here I am.
I appreciate you being. I am here.
Thank you.
Yeah, as far as the Buck Rogers series goes, what was your favorite episode would be my first question. And my second question, I couldn't help but notice that all of the co-actresses that worked with you were all extremely good looking. I'm not sure if that was...
That was in my contract.
I would
I
like
was
to
very specific about that.
I'm sure. My question is...
It had to also be easy.
I would like to ask which one was your favorite kiss and why?
Kiss?
Yes, favorite episode and favorite kiss.
Okay, favorite episode was, even though I didn't like the second year, my favorite episode does exist in the second year, was the Satyr. Because it gave me an opportunity to play a real interesting kind of character. It's something I hadn't had an opportunity to do before, so I really had a great deal of fun with that. I think it also reflected visually what I had always wanted to see happen with Buck Rogers. I wanted Buck to stay on Earth. I never understood why, after being away from Earth for 500 years, he suddenly hops on a thing and takes off again. I kept saying, I would rather see Buck stay on Earth and have adventures on Earth with people who have survived whatever the Holocaust was that happened, that caused all this, and see how they're coping with life. I just thought it would be more interesting. And but anyway, but I did like that one because it was kind of a frontier setting. So that was fun to do. Favorite kiss? You mean on camera or off camera? Exactly, yeah. I don't know. I like kissing women. It's fine, Now that I'm married, of course, I only kiss one. But,
That's the right answer.
she's not even in the audience, but she is here. She's making her own jewelry now, in case anybody's interested. Carolyn, you were there, yes. Favorite, that's all I have to say about that. No matter what I said, I'd be screwed one way or the other, or not. You had your hand
I
up?
did have my hand up. Who's your favorite person to work with throughout your entire career? I know you've worked with a lot of amazing actors. and
Suzanne Plachette. Yeah, she was a hoot. I really loved her to death. She once said the reason she liked working with me, she said, "You're the only actor in Hollywood whose voice is deeper than mine." She was something else. She was great. She had a sign she put on her motorhome that said, you know, knock, do not enter, doing eyebrows or eyelashes or something. She was funny. Good lady. I did 2 movies with her. Health Wanted Male was the second highest rated TV movie in the history of television. Yeah, we got a 47.7 rating. The only thing that ever beat us was The Gambler, which had a 50.1. So that meant that 47.7% of the TVs in this country were tuned into that show, that movie. Hasn't been topped since, except for The Gambler. That's all, right? Yeah. But I had a series of really terrific people to work with. You know, Jack Palance was really interesting to work with. We had some great guest stars on Buck Rogers, great guest stars on the other shows that I did. They were all great experiences, really, really wonderful experiences.
And I'm sure working with Michael Landry was.
That wasn't bad. No, Mike was great. You know, I did Airport 77, and I got to work with Jimmy Stewart, Joseph Cotton, Olivia de Havilland, Jack Lemmon. You know, he's like, okay, this is fine. I've died and gone to actor heaven. Thank you very much. I did a special, a Bob Hope special. I did a skit with Bob Hope and Danny Thomas, where we did a takeoff on Charlie's Angels. And the greatest thing that happened for me was we finished the rehearsal, and Danny Thomas and Bob Hope said, "Hey, kid, you know, you're really good." And I thought, okay, that's it. I don't have to do anything more. It was incredible. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. Bob was a great guy. He invited me to any show he was doing in L.A. I went to parties at his home. It was terrific. So,
I think we've got time for one more question.
what? How long is this thing on?
About 30 minutes.
That's it? That's all you're giving me?
There's technically nobody here after you, so you can have it. You can stay here all day if you want. I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that?
Well, you gotta ask more questions then.
I was just saying, can you tell us anything about like behind the scenes in Buck Rogers? You guys played jokes on each other. Is there anything you didn't like about it?
Well, the thing I didn't like about it was all the politics. That's always a pain in the ass, but I think that's in any kind of a business. I didn't like the fact that I wasn't listened to for 2 years about the show. I finally went to what they call the Black Tower, the executive suites, talked to the president and the vice president of television, and told them, I said, look, I've been trying to do this for 2 years. I just got to tell you, this is what I always wanted to see happen with Buck Rogers. I wanted to see him say, he offered a position with the directorate and say, thanks, but no thanks. I haven't been here in 500 years. I need to put my hand on something that like is familiar to me. I'd kind of like to know what's been going on for people and have adventures on Earth. And they said, God, that's the best idea we've heard in 2 years. Why haven't we heard it before? I said, because no one would listen to me. So they liked it so well, they knew I was friends with Brandon Tartikoff, who was president of NBC at the time. So they said, would you call Brandon and talk to him? So I called Brandon. I said, Brandon, I was talking to the guys here at Universal. I pitched this idea to them. They think it's really terrific. They asked me to pitch it to you. So here it is. So I told him the same thing. He said, if we pick up the show for a third season, well, that's the direction we'll take it in. And of course, it didn't get picked up, so. Because it was the most expensive show on television at the time. It was $1.5 million an episode. Yeah. And then now they spend even more, and it's really crappy. It's amazing. We could have had a decent show for less money actually, because if we'd done the way I wanted to do it, it would not have been as expensive because we wouldn't have been doing all those expensive special effects every week. That's what was driving the cost up so much. You had your hand
I
up.
was gonna ask if $1.5 million, if that was also in your contract.
No, I didn't get it. No, I negotiated a fairly decent deal, but it wasn't that. Yeah. Now they're getting $1 million. I think it's like unbelievable what these people are getting paid. Like, damn, I want to do another series. Yeah. Somebody, yes, sir.
You did mention about the difference in kind of tone between season 1 and season 2.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Was that politics behind the scenes too?
Well, it was, what happened was we changed executive producers. A guy named John Mantley came in the second season. And I really didn't like him much at all. I remember I didn't like him at all. I thought he was an arrogant prick. Huh?
How do you feel about it?
Well, I have to be somewhat politic, you know what I'm saying? Asshole. Anyway. We had a meeting, and it was like, he was very happy and thought it was great, the fact that he ripped off one of his, he used to do Gunsmoke. I always said, yeah, he took all the credit for Gunsmoke. What he did was, he presided over the demise of Gunsmoke. That's what he did. He was the last executive producer on Gunsmoke. But he wrote this script. McLean played the Apache chief. Barbara Luna played his wife. And of course, Matt Dillon was Matt Dillon. And the story was, they were enemies. The guy's wife is injured. As they're traveling on the trail, they get to a doctor, etc. Does that sound familiar? That was the episode of The Hawk. He took that story with Michael and Sarah and was laughing about the fact that he actually cast Barbara Luna in both roles. She played Michael and Sarah's wife as the Apache chief, and she played Tom Christopher, or Hawk's wife, in Time of the Hawk. And all the rest of the story was exactly the same. I was the Matt Dillon character, obviously. Interesting side note, when we shot, I don't know, how many of you saw Time of the Hawk? Okay, oh, one person. Yeah, that's why we didn't stay on for another year. Actually, what he did with that show was destroyed us, because I watched the ratings. I was signed into the Nielsen ratings, and I watched the ratings drop every 15 minutes of Time of the Hawk. So much so, we dropped so much that the next day, I said to Tom Christopher, who played Hawk, I said, you might as well start looking for another job, because we're not going to live through this. You don't take your 2-hour ba-bum kind of a show and lose ratings every 15 minutes and survive. We didn't. That's why I was having meetings with them later, trying to get something going for it. Anyway, where was I? Oh, an interesting side note: the battle scene, the fight scene. I did that with a broken rib. Yeah, I don't know if you'd seen it, you'd see that it was. We did it at Vasquez Rocks in California. I had done Circus of the Stars the weekend before, and I did the elephant act, and the elephant broke my rib. There was a part in the act where I was standing at the back of the ring, and Anna Mae was the elephant's name, and she was lying on her side, and I yelled, "Anna Mae up!" And Anna Mae would start like this, and go like this, and go like this, and as she's doing all this, I'm running up her back. Now, an elephant when you stack an elephant up from its butt to its head, it's up there high, right? So what happened was, I got all the way up to the head. The head was about that big around. Put my hands on the head to push myself up, because what I was going to do is stand on the top of her head and go, ta-da! And I got here, and I thought she had settled, but she hadn't. And all she did was just settle back like that. That's all she did, and it broke my rib. And I'm up 30 feet in the air. So I went ahead and went out and ta-da and all that crap. and then I go anime down, and she just drops, and as she drops, I then drop down behind her neck and sit, and we go around with her and all that kind of stuff. And then later in the act, there was a leopard, a 65-pound leopard that would leap into my arms, and I'd put the leopard over my shoulders and walk around with the leopard around. Well, when the leopard hit me in the chest, it was really kind of painful because that's where my rib was broken. So I went to the doctor and I said, well, you know, what's the deal? And he said, well, it's broken. It's more in the cartilage than the bone, so you don't have to worry about it jabbing into your lung or anything. It's just going to be painful as hell. And I said, well, is it going to get any better? Should I wait till tomorrow or whatever? And they said, well, no. Actually, it'll probably hurt worse the longer you wait. So I said, okay. So we shot the whole segment and got it finished. And then I went back to LA, and the next day we did a fight scene. So it's the glamour showbiz. So Vasquez Rocks, 2 days of fight scene with a broken rib, with Hawk going up and down all this stuff and landing and falling and rolling in the rocks and all that kind of stuff. It was great. Yes, sir.
In the Buck Rogers series, your sidekick was the little robot Twiggy.
Twiggy, right.
And the voice actor,
Mel Blanc.
Mel Blanc. I was looking up his name so I could ask the question. I was just curious when you shot those scenes with him, was Mel ever on stage, or was that all done post and they just had somebody else read his lines or something?
Yeah, the script person read his line. The funny thing is that Twiggy had no voice when we shot the movie. And as a tribute to Felix Silla, who was inside that costume, he created a character through 2 inches of plastic and rubber that people really, really loved, with no voice. And the reason they put a voice to him is because what he created in that character was so rich that the dialogue just came to the producers, and so they started writing dialogue for that character. I personally hated it initially because I was so used to relating to Twiggy, the character, and being able to read what he was meaning by his gestures. I just thought it's not necessary to have a voice because he really was incredible. You know, he never gets credit for what a great job he did. You know, if you think about, for instance, Cousin It on the Addams Family. I mean, he worked through what, a 3-foot wig or whatever. I mean, who does that? I don't think I'd want to do it. But and yet he creates characters that are just unbelievable. They're alive. And you can't see his face, his hands, or anything else. And yet you know what that character is feeling. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So the next time you see Felix, give him a hand for being such a really good actor. He's one of the greatest minds I've ever seen.
When they dubbed in the voice, it was rather sassy.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, Twiggy was kind of sassy. See, that's the thing. When I had the dialogue with Twiggy when he didn't have any dialogue. So my response to him was because of what he was doing, and the response that Theophilus had with him was because of what he was doing physically within that suit.
Yeah.
So he was alive to me and to the person that was doing the voice of Theophilus.
Before he had a voice, was that kind of the feeling? I was trying to recall the scenes where he didn't have a voice.
Yeah. He was a sassy little character without a voice.
Yeah. It seems like I remember him, kicking somebody in the foot or something.
Yeah, but that's where the dialogue came from, was in the incredible stuff that he did without any kind of dialogue at all. It was great. And then we started doing the dialogue. Of course, that was all. Glen Larson was the great, added line guy. I mean, good God, I used to do so much stuff, and I go, where was I when I was doing this line? Where's this come from? Why am I saying this? Because he'd just give you the lines, like, okay, well, it would help if I knew what happened before and who am I talking to? So, but it was fun. Being on the set was great. Being on any set for me is great. I really love the people I work with. People in this industry are incredible. It's just, as I said, it was the politics behind the scenes that got a little bit old. Yes, sir.
I was working with Erin.
How was it? It was good.
Did you guys get along, or?
Yeah.
Did she hate wearing that skin-tight outfit?
I don't think so. No. I mean, every time I took it off, no, she was fine. She was new, but it worked for that character. But she was a little stiff, a little formal, a little scared in a way, because it was like the first big thing she'd ever done. And, but it worked, because Wilma was supposed to be, you know, a real kind of, you know, strict, this is the way we do it, sort of thing. So it made the perfect foil for Buck. Didn't really have to do a whole lot. I was going to let her do her thing, and I could react to it. So, and it worked perfectly for that. Yes, sir.
I remember, my question is basically, did you ever have a singing career? Because I do believe that when you were flying back in, you were singing a song called Chicago, and it was actually very well.
Thank you. I used to do musical theater. I did a National Company of Applause. I did Billy Bigelow in Carousel, Curly in Oklahoma, Joey in Most Happy Fella. I'm a lyric baritone. I did I Do in Philadelphia. Stuff like that. So I wouldn't call that a singing career, but I was a song and dance man, very small dance.
You danced with Pamela pretty well.
Well, yeah. They finally got the steps in tune with the music.
Yeah, I think you called it Getting Down.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something interesting about that is that when we shot that scene, and of course there's no music, all you hear are clicks. That's the beat, right? So you step to the beat, whatever, and there's no music going on. So you sort of have to hear music in your head and make sure that you're sort of moving to the beat. Da-da-da-da-da-da, right? Well, when the movie came out, I was doing this, and the beat was going boop, boop. That's like, and it looked like I was the biggest klutz in the world. And I was like, "Thank you guys, that's really great." It's laughable. It's so bad. When it came out with the DVDs, somehow they slid the track or something, and so now we're actually on the beat. So now it looks like Buck knows what the hell he's doing.
Now you're a dancer.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, something. At least I didn't look like a total klutz like I did before. Yes, sir.
Have you ever been approached by like Dancing with the Stars, or would you consider doing something like
No.
that?
Not really. It's like they wanted me to do a Love Boat, and I said no. I wasn't interested. Actually, they wanted me to do the one they did in China. I have a thing about that. My whole thought was, why should I go someplace and contribute to the economy of a place whose sole purpose is to overthrow my country? Same reason I wouldn't go to Russia. Why would I give money to those people? You know, I'd love to see like those things, China, the places in China. I'd love to see the places in Russia, but I will not contribute to a society whose sole purpose is the overthrow of my own country. And it really pisses me off that so many companies don't give a damn. They spend billions of dollars in China, and guess what they use that money for? To build weapons to blow us out of the water. I get a little upset about it. I do. You know that, you know who owns all the stuff, who gets all the money for the G.I. Joes, for the U.S., anything, any kind of Army toys or whatever? The People's Chinese Army, Air Force, and Army and Navy. They get all that money. They use the money that our kids spend for G.I. Joe to build weapons to kill our soldiers and to destroy our country. And yet we still go on with it, just blithely going along. Every action figure is made in China. I have a friend who does action figures, and he got a call from the Chinese military and said, if you start doing any kind of military characters, we will kill you. You ever heard a manufacturer do that to a creator of an action story here? But the Chinese military are so arrogant, they called the man up and said, "You'll be a dead man if you do any of these kinds of military characters." That's the way this business is going. That's what's going on. There is no one in this country that can do action figures anymore. They're all in China. And I know they talk about this, balance of payments and all this other stuff, and isn't that great? But we are destroying ourselves. So, I'm not going to stand up on the soapbox and beat it. I just feel very strongly about it. I remember when I was in high school, there was a poem, and I'm not sure the name of it, but it had to do with the 3rd Avenue L. And it was a poem written about tearing down the 3rd Avenue L and selling the metal for scrap to Japan. And Japan melted it and made it into bullets that then killed our people in South. That was the whole gist of the whole thing. Is they're being killed by the 3rd Avenue L. Well, that's what we're doing now. Only it's not the 3rd Avenue L, it's action figures and toys and things like that. We are contributing to the demise of our own people and to ourselves and our own civilization. So we have only ourselves to thank for all those really great weapons that the Chinese are coming up with, because we're buying them. Just thought you'd like to know that. Other than that, I have no stance about it at all. I'm very pro-USA. I think they were the greatest country in the world. I don't know about, I don't want to get anybody upset. I don't know how we could be great again. That implies that we weren't great before. I think we never stop being great. That's just me. So, anybody else? Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any current projects?
No. Watering the lawn. Nothing right now. I did a movie called The Nice Guys with Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. I played the main bad guy. That was kind of fun. That was about 2 years ago. I think it's out on HBO now or someplace. I did the voiceover or the voice of Megatronus, Transformers, the cartoon series. It's just, it comes in drips and drabs. It's not, basically when a person turns 50 in my business, it's like they died. I think they have a service for us, but they don't tell us about it. We can't even invite our families or anything, So when I'm 74, so I'll be 75 in January, so, you can imagine, I must be rotting in my grave.
Yeah.
But I do get, once in a while, a call comes through. I actually still turn down things that I don't want to do, so, which is not too bad. I still manage to make a living. But the business has been really good to me. I'm not really crazy about where the business has gone. I'm not crazy about some of the stuff that the business is putting forth as being okay. And I'm not going to go into details about it, but there's just some things that I think are just not right. That's just me. So my choice is I don't do it. I don't contribute to that. Just like I don't contribute to the economies of China or Russia. So, and I think in many respects both are just as destructive to this country in different ways. Somebody else? Yes, ma'am.
Mine's kind of, really like Buck Rogers, frankly, because I thought you were really hot.
Thank you.
Still are.
Oh, that's, I'm not that sensitive, really. I want to go, so what's the matter now? I'm just a slug now, aren't I? Sorry, go ahead.
There were a lot of scenes where, of course, with the tight uniforms, but a lot where you were shirtless or whatever. How did you feel about filming those scenes? Were you okay with that, or did you think maybe it?
I felt so used. I really did. I felt exploited. I actually called a lawyer. No, I'm kidding. Actually, I never had a really good body image. So when I had to do a shirtless thing, I was nervous about it.
Well, I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Chest, so it was really great.
Oh, well, thank you.
There's my son, so
That's okay.
I was paid back from yesterday.
Yeah,
Say it again?
I was sitting in front of them yesterday when he was embarrassing her, so I said, that was payback.
Oh, okay, all
It
right.
probably wasn't embarrassing me that much. It takes a lot to embarrass me.
Okay. I didn't really have my shirt off that much, I don't think. There was a couple of them.
I remember those more.
I have a mug with a picture of me with topless. Where are you going?
I have to go work some more at the ticket booth.
Excuse me? What? You haven't been dismissed. Go ahead. I'm just teasing you. Get your ass back here. Yes, sir. Huh?
How are you doing with your health since the...
How the fuck you think I'm doing?
Are you doing good, or are you just lazy?
Ah.
But you have to take a picture with me for my husband,
Why?
because he was a big fan. I got your
Is he into that kind of stuff?
He loves He just loves the Rogers adventure. He was not, yeah.
He went into hairy chest? Okay. I was a little hirsute, as they say. But my health is good, thank you. I did a special, I guess you were referring to that, on Discovery, which I hated the title of. Action Hero Makeover. I was like, oh God. But I didn't, that wasn't my idea, that was Discovery. I weighed 359 pounds, almost 10 years ago, I guess, or more. And I had gastric bypass surgery, and I dropped down to about 205. And it saved my life because I had cardiomyopathy. To the point that my cardiologist was telling me that if it wasn't for the drugs that they had back then, he would have told me to go home and get my affairs in order and hope that I could get a heart transplant. My triglycerides were at 900 and something. My blood sugar was at 300 and something. So I was diabetic. I had cardiomyopathy. I weighed 359 pounds. But I had great blood pressure. And no problem with my blood pressure at all. And after I had, what we did was we did a special that went through the entire thing. So I have literally shown my guts to all of you, if you've ever seen it, because they filmed the surgery, and then they filmed me for a year after that, the aftermath of the whole thing. 2 weeks after the surgery, my triglycerides were below 200. My blood sugar was down to 87. I no longer was diabetic. I no longer had cardiomyopathy. My ejection rate, which is cardiomyopathy, if you have a severe case of it, like I did, your ejection rate is about 25%, which means your heart's only pumping a fourth of the amount of blood. A good ejection rate is about 55 to 65%. My ejection rate now is 60%, and it was 2 weeks after the surgery. I had also lost, 2 weeks after the surgery, I lost about 35 pounds. And it was the best thing I've ever done in my life. So that's what that was all about. And my health has been great ever since. As the weight goes up and down, I don't even worry about it. I eat whatever I feel like eating. I listen to my body. And so far it's doing okay. I figure it knows what it's doing, so I'm just going to try to keep this out of it and let it go. So I've been happy. I've been very blessed. I thank God for the surgeon who came up with this thing, because it was great for me. And I would recommend it for anybody who's having a problem with weight.
My wife had the surgery. She had the sleeve done.
Oh yeah.
She lost 130 pounds.
Yeah, but that's terrible.
Sleeve's not that bad.
Well, yes, and I mean, I guess, I don't know that much. I know that they don't cut the stomach, right?
It's where they go in and they basically put a tube down your throat, suck everything that's in there out, and then they just staple it right along the edge of that tube, cut the rest of your stomach out. So your
They do cut the stomach.
So your stomach
Okay.
goes from the size of a football to about the size of a banana. And
Well,
then
mine was the size of a large Sharpie when they finished. But that's okay if they cut the stomach. And the reason I say that is because there is an enzyme in the body called ghrelin, which basically signals your brain that you're hungry. If you don't cut the stomach and get rid of the ghrelin, which is what happened with me, the ghrelin was gone. I forgot to eat many times because I just didn't feel hungry. But if you don't cut it and you go on a diet or you try, or people that have had the lap band, you know, which is basically they just restrict the thing. What happens is the ghrelin is still in your system. When you go on a diet, the ghrelin increases in your stomach and drives you nuts. I had a friend who had the sleeve, not the sleeve, but the lap band, excuse me, done. And I was not very charitable to him because what he was doing was he was being driven so nuts by the ghrelin, which I didn't know about at the time, that he was just drinking chocolate malts to try to satisfy and feel full. It was the only thing he could get past that little opening going to his stomach. But his stomach was still the same size as it had been. But if they cut the stomach, then she's going to be fine.
No, she went from 280 to 150, and she's had it about a year now, and she's so happy she did it.
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing to me. It made all the difference in the world. It was incredible. I mean, just there was a shot in the special where I'm like this, and there's the steering wheel. I had a Suburban at the time, and there were times that my steering wheel would catch on my stomach as I was turning, and I had to turn the wheel past my stomach real quick, otherwise I'd run into the curb. And as the year went on, they kept that shot, and you could see the wheel going further and further and further away from my stomach, until finally it was like there was space there. So it was amazing to me. My energy level went up like crazy. I wasn't eating nearly as much as I used to. So, but all the other things that were so serious were gone within 2 weeks. Anybody else? You're the one who wants to do the dirty pictures like I did.
Let's have a Buck Rogers remake. You know, they're doing a lot of remakes on several of the movies, and they're pretty bad. But
well, if they do a remake of Buck Rogers,
no, there's no
guarantee that it won't be bad also. I don't know. I have nothing to do with it. If I own the rights, hell, we'd have done it 20 years ago. I actually tried to do another feature when the show was canceled. I was in contact with the Dilly family. They're the ones who own the rights. And they weren't interested. And, you know, that whole thing about flogging a dead horse, you know, it's like, okay. I mean, I hated it because I really didn't think that Buck, that this whole concept of Buck Rogers had ever fulfilled its, you know, where it could be. And I just thought, you know, I wanted Buck to go back, like if we did another feature, I wanted Buck to go back and go to Anarchia and solve that problem of why are these people, I can understand why they're so angry. Because anytime anybody comes out from the inner city, they shoot them. So that pissed me off too. And so what I always thought was Buck could go out there and he's on his way to have adventures, but he gets captured by them. But he finds out that these are people just like anybody else. Just because they're ugly and misshapen or whatever, they still want a better life for their kids. They'd like a better life for themselves and their families. And they're sort of at the, they're not victims, I hate that word victims, but they're sort of at the whim or the mercy of these marauding bands of really bad people who happen to be mutants. I don't know if you remember from the movie, but I could never understand why it was necessary to live in a bubble when I was out there for quite a while with Tweaky. And when they came out to get me, none of them were in hazmat suits.
It did just say radiation in some areas.
Yeah, well, screw that.
Because it looked cool on TV.
I guess it would have looked kind of stupid to see them all come out in hazmat suits and stuff, and carrying a gun around. But the thing is, it's like, you know, I thought to myself, well, you know, why doesn't Buck ask that question? It's like, why are you guys living in a bubble? It seems to be okay out here, and why are these people, why do you think they're bad just because they've had a rough time? Why don't you take care of these people? Why don't you do something to help them?
Their bubble wasn't to keep them safe inside, it was to keep everybody else out.
You really? Did you do the show? Oh, okay. That's what you came with it. Well, see, me was like they were just living in a bubble to be safe. And it was very significant about a statement about the society, is that they lived in this bubble. And they even had artificial sunrises and sunsets. It was a totally phony, fake society. Whereas the people who were outside that they were supposed to be governing or whatever were not being taken care of. They were basically just being abused. So I just thought it'd be cool if Buck went out there and it's like, yeah, why is this going on? And these are good, decent people. They just happen to be scarred and stuff. They've had a tough time with whatever's going on, whatever government thing went on and caused all this stuff.
You ought to pitch that idea now.
Huh?
Pitch that idea now. Go back to them.
Nah. I tried. Actually, there were three books I wanted to write. Basically, sort of like, you know, remember Hitchcock had this thing, is that these are three films that I always wanted to do, weren't able to do in my series or whatever. I wanted like 3 books I want to write 3 stories that we never got a chance to do on Buck Rogers. One was going out into Anarchy, another was having adventures basically. I couldn't get them interested in it. The Dilly family.
Kickstarter campaign.
It doesn't. I don't have the rights. That's the thing. They have the rights. I mean, I could write it, and they could say, "Well, thank you very much," and we'll take all the money for it.
Make your own character.
Or they sue me for doing it, huh?
Make your own character and write your own book.
Well, I'm kind of doing it now. Sort of explaining, without explaining, where Buck has been for the last 30 years. He's been on another planet. Remember when he took off the last show? They were going to another universe, an alternate universe. Buck has been there for 30 years. He was imprisoned by an alien society after they went through the Stargate. They were set upon. They were betrayed by someone close to Buck. And he was in prison for 10 years. And then he was released, or not released, but he escaped. And now he's been with the rebel forces for the last 20 years. Does that sound interesting?
Yes.
That's where I'm at with this thing. So, I'm working on it. We don't call him Buck. We don't mention that he was on Earth 500 years before, or whatever. It just talks about where he's at now, and what's going on now.
Is his name William?
I can't tell you. It's like, tell him Willie Boy was here. Isn't that a movie or something? Tell him Willie Boy was here. Anybody else?
To be continued.
Well, hopefully, yeah. If I keep waking up every morning, yeah, you're stuck with me.
Let's
So.
give it up one more time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Let's see somebody's table. I'll put a little bit more, get some pictures signed, get some pictures taken. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Love your suit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Todd.
Come on, girl.
Five, six, seven, eight.